Dr. Denny Wilkins, you told me earlier this week you've never been on a podcast before.
That is correct.
That's stunning to me, given the number of students you have had and the wisdom you have to share. Dot, dot, dot.
Well, perhaps I didn't want to make an ass of myself.
Why would that stop you now? This is The Other 51. I'm Brian, and this week my guest is Dr. Denny Wilkins, professor of journalism at St. Bonaventure University. Well, I am honored to be your first podcast here as we return on The Other 51. So we've known each other for a really long time now, going on 25 years, 26 years.
Starting in 1996.
1996, your first year at St. Bonaventure, where you teach, and I was a sophomore, and you let me live. I'm amazed. So, all right, I'm immediately going to regret this decision, but we got to get it out of the way. Tell them what I was like as a sophomore.
I think I would rather open with something you said on Facebook a couple of years ago.
Oh, God.
You said, I just wrote a 70-word sentence, and somewhere Denny Wilkins' head is exploding.
I remember that. I forget it was in grad school. I forget what the context was, but it's not necessary.
No, I never forgot that. You as a student, you were a good student.
Thank you.
I mean, well, compared to the students I have today, the people I was teaching from 1996, maybe to 2007, 2008, they understood language use. I didn't have to teach that. And now my courses that you took from me are completely different, because now I have to explain what a comma is, and that it's not an arbitrary decision, that there are actually rules that govern comma use for the sake of clarity. I try to teach them that punctuation is instruction to the reader about what to do with the words you've chosen to use. I just find it frustrating that I don't get to teach some of the things that I should be teaching to college sophomores in our field, because I have so much catch-up work to do. Because I'm the last stop before they become juniors and seniors and start taking elective courses.
Why do you think that is? Like, what do you have any sense of, like, maybe what happened in 2007, 2008 that changed that, or kind of any sense from talking to students as they get older? Like, what caused that change?
I don't know, but when I talk to students about the kind of education they got when it comes to language use, they would say, well, I took a couple of English courses, but I think there's been a de-emphasis on basic language use, and while we're at it, basic civics in high schools. And what I'm seeing now is compounded by the pandemic, because I'm teaching kids who have effectively missed 2 years of high school in terms of language use training.
So you mentioned the it's keeping you from teaching what you would like to be teaching at the sophomore level. So what is that? What would you, given perfect world, not perfect students, but kind of along that, what's the goal? What would you like to be teaching students at this point in their career?
Curiosity.
Okay.
That is probably it's a strong word to use, but I think it's the biggest failing among my students. They're insufficiently curious about the world around them, because my basic teaching message in all my courses is that your best ideas are going to come out of your own lived experience. And if they're constantly walking around with staring at a phone, they're missing a great part of their lived experience. Now, I told my opinion writing class yesterday, listen, if you're locked inside a phone as your lived experience, well, at least write about that experience.
So how do you teach curiosity?
I try to demonstrate it.
Okay.
For example, take Bonaventure's nickname. Spell it, Brian.
Bonnies. And
you would be wrong.
You love saying that. That is your favorite thing to say in the world.
Oh, I know. especially to you. But Bonaventure's nickname is Bona apostrophe S. And it's a noun that looks like a singular possessive. But until roughly 1931, 32, Bonaventure was St. Bonaventure apostrophe S College.
Hmm.
So the nickname grew out of early Bonaventure history because of that possessive construction in its name. Well, in the early 1930s, we started offering graduate courses, and then we became St. Bonaventure University. But I am sick and tired of seeing Bonas, especially when it's promoted by the university in athletics because they don't use the apostrophe.
Well, what's interesting to me about that, and we're getting way deep in the Bonaventure world, but you got two Bonaventure people here, so get used to it, people. Is that for the longest time I thought that the BONAS was right. And like the BONA apostrophe S was like your phone would auto correct it, or like you didn't know any
Oh,
better. And then I saw the university guide, the usage guide, or the style book for the university
St.
give.
Bonaventure Writing Style Guide. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. Tells the story that you just told. It's like, St. John's in New York, that the similar style. And I like that. And so I've, kind of started doing that, but I like that they spelled out the story on it. But for the longest time, that was Bona's was no apostrophe, like in colloquial use among alums. And as we wrote about it, we never knew that.
Now you know, Brian.
And knowledge is power, Denny. Knowledge is power. So aside from what we've just said, how have you changed as a teacher from 1996 to today?
Oh God, patience. I've had to learn patience almost annually all over again, um, because these kids are spending tens of thousands of dollars on a college education. And although, I earned my nickname, Spawn of Satan, quite early, um, I have to be patient with them, even if they don't know what a comma is, let alone how to use it. Because, like I said, I'm literally the last stop, and I have to make up for everything that they missed so far. Otherwise, they're not going to prosper in the second half of their college education, to say nothing of prospering in their first or second job.
Mhm.
So, patience is basically it.
So our namesake at Bonaventure in our communication school, Russell J. Jandoli, I don't know if I think I've shown you this, but I have something that he wrote about kind of teaching journalism and teaching writing. Um, and this is when he passed away in 1991, so obviously this is old. And he wrote that the first thing, can you teach the first question on here is, can writing be taught? And he talks as an essay about it. So I give that question to you, can writing be taught?
No, but it can be coached.
Okay.
And the irony is, um, the best coaching I ever got as a teacher was from Jim Crowley, who was the head coach of the women's basketball team. And Jim once told me the best coaching advice he ever got was from me. And I was a faculty athletics rep back then. And I used to go to practice on Jim's team frequently because I had a lot of journalism majors who were on his squad. But Jim and we benefited immensely from just talking to each other. And I came to think about what I do as coaching.
Okay.
Jim's problem is he has to teach people how to make 3 free throws consistently. So it's repetition, 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 repetition. And you may remember the quizzes you took from me.
Mhm.
It was the same thing. Repetition, repetition, repetition. These language use quizzes that I gave just repeat the same thing over and over and over again using different words and different sentences. Between patience and approaching writing as a coaching enterprise, that has proven successful for me.
So aside from repetition, what are the other lessons that Coach Crowley taught you and that you taught him? What are some of those other things that apply to your writing slash coaching style?
Well, Jim was always prepared for practice. And I've always been a little loose on preparation because I need to, as we say, read the room when I walk in to find out exactly what I'm going to do. Uh, at least having a game plan in mind And again, I don't use a textbook because the writing that they do is my textbook. You remember me putting overheads up on the screen and ripping your work to shreds.
Mhm.
That was always fun, Brian. I really enjoyed
I gave you plenty to work with, that's for sure.
that. Well, what I teach the next day depends on what I saw in their work.
Mm.
Um, so I don't have a syllabus that spells out on week 2, we're going to do this. On week 3, we're going to do that. Because in the course I'm teaching right now that I've taught since 1996, it all depends on how did they do on the last assignment.
So that's an interesting point, the syllabus thing. And I found in my own teaching that like it feels like students, and I don't know if this is how they're taught in high school, if how they're taught in their earlier classes. I used to, when I taught undergrads, I got them as mostly juniors and seniors, but like they would seem to get really antsy when you didn't have that planned syllabus or when you didn't have that rubric set up.
Yeah.
Are you finding that?
Oh yeah.
Okay. How do you just say tough noogies and do it your way, or how do you kind of work
I
around that with them?
I say tough doogies politely.
Okay.
And I also point out to them that they're not going to get a syllabus when they get their first job.
Right.
You do what the boss tells you to do day in, day out. My job is to prepare them not only to be competent communicators who can speak and write with clarity, but also I have to help them understand the nature of work.
Okay.
What is the workplace environment like? How do you behave in a workplace environment? Um, that's important training that I don't think they often get in school.
So you mentioned writing from your lived experience. So I want to ask you, of course, about your lived experience. And I'm curious how a geology major turns into a journalism professor.
Oh, well, in March of 1970, I was in 6 courses at UMass and routinely blowing them off. And I went to the post office one day to pick up my mail, and I got this big package. When I opened it up, it was my diploma from UMass. I went, what the? This, my whole thought was, I don't want to go to Vietnam. I'm staying in school. So I called the registrar's office, and they said, hey, you had 122 credits and a 2.2 GPA. You graduated. Congratulations. And I went, well, I never withdrew from those 6 courses. And when I factored those into my GPA, my undergraduate GPA was 1.98. Yay, me. Anyhow, I walked out of the post office and I thought, I'll go over to Y for my workout. And I said, no, I'm going down to Brad's place, for breakfast. And when I walked between the Unitarian Church and the Chamber of Commerce where my mom worked, there was a path that led to the back door of the newspaper. To this day, Brian, I don't know why I did this. Here's the path, and I turned down it and I walked in. And I asked the editor, do you know anybody in the State Department of Natural Resources? Because I could do that kind of work for a while, because I plan to go master's PhD and become the state geologist of Alaska. I walked out a halftime sports writer and a halftime environmental writer. Remember, this was 3 weeks before Earth Day, and everybody wanted to go green.
Right.
And 20 years later, I left and went back to school.
So tell us about what was the newspaper business? What was it like during that time in the 70s and 80s before you went back to school? Kind of what was, it's such a obviously different world and different environment and different media
Well,
landscape.
we were a 14,000 cert newspaper with when I started, we had 33 people in the newsroom.
Jesus.
We covered 26 towns, 3 large towns, the county seat being where we were, and 23 towns with an average population of maybe 1,800. And we covered them all. We had county reporters, and I was the county editor for a while before I became the editorial page editor. I mean, it was hard work, but you were producing local journalism every damn day, throughout the newspaper. When I left, and 20 years later, there were 14 people in the newsroom. And today, I don't know if there's 10 people in the newsroom.
I was going to say 14 people even sounds like a massive newsroom at this point.
Well, the old rule of thumb is one editorial employee for every 1,000 circulation.
Do you have a favorite? I mean, you have so many stories, but do you have kind of a favorite one that kind of captures that newspaper life from that era?
There was a guy who was the chairman of Board of Selectmen in a town I shall not name, but he was a farmer and disliked the newspaper. And I had to go interview him for a story. He said, "Come on out to the farm." I got there and I'm wearing, you know, white shirt, sport coat, jeans, that sort of thing. He's out in the pigsty slopping the hogs. He says, "Come on in." I says, "Give me a minute." I opened the trunk of my car and I pulled out farmer's overalls and a pair of wellies, slipped into them, got my tape recorder, walked right into the fucking pigsty.
Was he at least impressed? Was he at all impressed that you had farmer gear
He
with you?
was he was shocked. And that's one of the things that I teach. I tell my students, define appropriate dress for the workplace in journalism. And they come up with, what you might expect them to come up with. And I says, sure. But for me, one day, appropriate dress was wellies and farmer's overalls in a pigsty.
So why'd you go back to school?
Well, I had health problems and I ended up in the emergency room twice during my last couple of years. And I got lacerated the second time. And I remember reaching up and grabbing the scapula of Father Judd and saying, "Not yet," and then passing out. So I thought going to graduate school would take less of a toll on my health and sanity. And of course, I was wrong,
Right.
as you well know.
So thinking about you as a teacher, you as a professor, and the lessons that you give, I think there's three words that everybody who had you, especially kind of back in the era when I did, and after that, always think of when they think of you: omit needless words.
Yeah,
I mean, I think it used to be on your university headshot. You used to stand in front of it.
I have these little business cards, and all I say on them is omit needless words, and I hand them out.
Why is that the lesson that why is that so big for you?
Because you wrote a 70-word sentence. That's why.
It was for an academic paper. That was still a short sentence for them.
Oh, God, Brian.
I did end up going back and trimming that sentence. I think that was a rough draft.
Well, I forget who said it, but one thing I remembered is clutter is the disease of American writing. Well, let me give you an example of why omitting needless words matters to me. When I wrote my first novel, it came in at 135,000 words. I sent it off to 70 agents, see if they'd pick it up for me. 69 said, "This does not meet our needs at this time." But the 70th photocopied 4 pages of it, and he sent it back to me and saying, "Listen, it's a very good story. You're a very good writer, but you're wordy." And I was going, "The hell I am." And I stuck the novel up on a shelf, for 6 months before I swallowed my ego. But the first thing I did was I cut 7,000 words out of 135,000 because it was a redundant expression of a character trait.
Okay.
So I'm down to 128. It took me 2 months, but I went through every single sentence, trying to make each sentence one word shorter.
Okay.
I did that 3 times. I didn't lose a fact. I didn't lose a story element. I didn't use a character. I didn't lose anything. But I lost 30,000 words, getting down to 98,000 words.
Wow.
And one of the things that I teach kids is you want to rid your copy of extraneous words. Well, I tell them try to make each sentence one word shorter, repeat, repeat. But I also tell them to read it backwards, touching every word with a pencil, because sometimes you get fooled. Your mind gets fooled by the sense of the sentence, and that's not exactly what you wrote. And they'll catch errors that way, but they'll also see words that, you know, that word can't defend its existence in this story, and they'll take it out. But shorter, if you keep removing words that cannot defend their presence in a piece of writing, you end up with shorter sentences. Shorter sentences breed clarity.
Okay.
I'm not talking about a steady diet of shorter sentences. You need a variety of sentence lengths to increase tension, decrease tension, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But you look at the New York Times lead sentences in virtually every story, and you're looking at 55, 60, 65 word sentences. And my head has exploded many times reading the Times.
I think you posted this on Facebook the other day. There was a tweet about Aaron Judge when he hit his 60-second home run. This week as we're recording this, last week as this comes out, and they had like the tweet, like he rounded the bases with a smile on his face.
On his face, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I thought that was hysterical.
That is good. So I guess not to it's funny because when I had Dr. Rick Simpson on the podcast during the pandemic, that's the lesson that he taught me. I vividly remember him reading over one of my papers in freshman seminar, and like, I think I'm really good and I'm a good writer. And he does the thing where like he gets a page and a half and he's like, take this to the library, look up Strunk and White Rule 17, which is omit needless words, and then do the same thing that you did. So for sake of pushing back in conversation, how do you then, from omitting needless words, still have a piece that has life and have personality? That's not just
Brian, you reach into your lived experience, because your lived experience is probably going to be more similar than you think in the lived experience of your readers. I mean, you can't take these things apart in isolation. You bring to the act of writing who you are, who you have been, who you hope to be, plus everything you know about language use, and of course, the enormous amount of research you've done on the topic you're writing about. Because one thing I've learned in my lifetime is if you don't know anything about it, don't write about it until you do.
Right. So aside from, you mentioned the pencil working backwards, physically touching each word, trying to eliminate words from one word from each sentence. Any other tips that you have on omitting needless words?
Well, one of the things that I see students when they're writing in class is they'll write in one big, thick, black block of text without any paragraph breaks.
Kills me.
Well, it breeds error because they are only seeing a block of text. And I tell them, write a sentence, hit the return a couple of times, then write your next sentence, hit the return a couple of times. So your sentences are spaced out from another. And that way you can focus on one sentence at a time. Then when you think you've got the sentences where you want them, paragraph them the way you think they ought to be paragraphed. But you can't write a clear piece of writing unless you can write a series of clear sentences.
Right. So somebody listening to this, whether it's a student, a grad student, a young journalist, an old writer, what are some things that they could do along with the omit needless word stuff this great stuff we've been talking about? What's some of the stuff they could do with their next piece of writing to make it better?
Well, one thing that they ought to be doing that they're not doing is simply reading more. And that has to be a steady diet. It doesn't have to be anything I'd be interested in reading, but just read. Get a sense of style, get a sense of cadence, get a sense of knowledge, but mostly be exposed to somebody else's lived experience. Because one of the things that I have trouble with is right now I have students who don't understand homonyms.
Okay.
And that's because they don't read enough. And they don't have a broad vocabulary that they should have at this point in their college careers because they're not reading enough. And even though they got a dictionary here, they've got a dictionary that they can put on the screen. They can put a thesaurus up there. I'm in the middle of writing novel number 3, and I'm using this dictionary and this thesaurus over and over again to get the right word. I mean, it is a moral imperative on the part of a writer to find the right word and cast out all the wrong ones. You can quote me on that. I rented it out at reasonable rates.
It's a podcast. We're quoting you on everything. So, yeah, and that's one of the things we try to do in the grad program too, is just expose them to that good reading. If for no, like, and I feel like it's one of those things that it can and should be done for its own sake. Like you're reading Snowfall by John Branch, which is a piece that I use a lot in the grad program, and just like the value is reading that piece. The value is, along with everything else you can learn from it, you just read it because it's great.
That was an extraordinary piece for many reasons.
Mm-hmm. So we talk about this is a great segue to the reading question, because I ask everybody I have on my podcast, what's the best thing you've read lately?
Well, I knew you would ask that question. And I'd start out by saying that I like to read stuff that explains things to me.
Okay.
For example, I've read Garbage Land, The Story of Trash. And these are all stuff I've read in the last year. I read The Grid, about the electrical infrastructure of the United States. I'm fascinated by concrete, a book called Concrete Planet.
Okay.
I've read The History of the Pencil, which is quite fascinating. There's a book called The Road Taken, which is about U.S. infrastructure writ large. The one I like the most, though, is a book called Rust, The Longest War.
Okay.
It's literally a book about rust. And whenever Michael Lewis puts out another book, I read it.
Sure.
Malcolm Gladwell, I've read them all. But the big winner for me is John McPhee.
Oh, he's the best.
I've read all of his books because he teaches a course at Princeton called The Literature of Fact. And I don't know anybody who captures as many details in that as he does. But more important, he's the master of using details. He puts the right fact in the right place for the maximum effect.
Okay.
And that's all about syntax too, which is a problem I have with my students. They may have all the right facts in the sentence, but because they misaligned the syntax, they've actually created an error in fact.
So the detail question. We'll have links to all these books in the show notes, and I'm good. I want to read them all, and my wife's gonna destroy me because she loves when I read like the history of the pencil. Like that's a book that fascinates me, and she's like, you can read for fun, and I'm like, this is fun, but here we are.
Henry Petrowski is an engineer. He also wrote a piece about the paperclip, which I found fascinating.
Oh, I'm here for that. But the McPhee point, and the using the right detail. Because that's obviously a good the great reporting lesson. Get the name of the dog is the cliche, or get the brand of the coffee, or the order or whatever. But then how do you this is a longer topic probably, but how do you use that right? Like how does McPhee use a detail correctly as opposed to just kind of piling it in to kind of show off that you got the name of the dog or whatever? Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean, but I don't have a good answer to that question. All I know is that when I'm reading the stuff that he writes, I'm never puzzled by a sentence.
Okay.
And that's the closest I can come to answering that. And he's covered so many different things. Most people don't appreciate his knowledge of geology, but he combined 3 of his works into a book called The Annals of the Earth. And it's literally the story of the geology. But it could be boring as hell, except for one thing. It is done in the guise of road trips with geologists looking at road cuts.
Oh, cool.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and, having my geologic background, fascinating. I would love to take his course.
I mean, he'll let you in.
Yeah.
Well, Denny, this has been awesome. I cannot believe nobody has had you on a podcast. Get on this, people. He's the best guest. So, and taught me everything.
I work cheap.
You do. Absolutely. So, Denny, thanks for being on. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian. See you soon.
Thanks for listening to The Other 51. Show notes for this and all of our episodes can be found at sportsmediaguide.com by clicking on the Other 51 tab. If you like the show, please consider giving it a rating and a review, either at Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. It really does help people find the show. Our theme music is by Ellie Moritz.